Welcome to Change the Narrative. I'm your host, JD Fuller,
I'm Susie Younger.
an African American licensed psychotherapist.
I'm also a licensed therapist.
We talk about the isms. We talk about the phobias. Anything that marginalizes and oppresses.
As a white woman, I ask the questions white people are too afraid to ask.
Everything we are not and everything we are is because of fear.
Through a mental health lens, Susie and I will have difficult conversations with celebrity guests, political activists, and everyone in between.
Our mind will tell us whatever we want to believe, but the truth lives in the body, and that's where change occurs.
Are you ready to change the narrative?
The themes of the collection shine bright as the author tells us of the sensual, bold, and unforgiving experiences of growing up Black in America. Shouts Madcreek Books, an imprint of the Ohio State University Press about our esteemed guest's latest collection of work, A More Perfect Union. Teri Ellen Cross Davis works her experience, music, identity, sexuality, and vulnerability into the power of poetry. Teri is unafraid to change the narrative and swim under the sea of truth. She is a distinguished scholar and author, with her multi-award-winning collections of movements through her revolutionary thought. As if this all weren't impressive enough, Teri is a mother of two, a wife, and an artist. As a bonus track, she's also a huge fan of Donna Summer and Prince. We can't wait to listen to the beauty of her colorful words as she shares her story with us today. Welcome, Teri Ellen Cross Davis.
Hi, Teri.
Hi, JD.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. And thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And shout out to my Smithy, Zena, who connected us. Much appreciation for that. I understand you and Zena's kids go to school together. Is that correct?
They do.
Okay.
They are both at an independent school right at the edge of the DC border to Maryland. And
Okay.
it's a school we love and cherish.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, happy to have you. So let's get started with my fascination with poets. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I'm fascinated by poets. So what were the influences that led you to start writing poetry?
I have to thank my mother because she taught me to read to Nikki Giovanni's poetry.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and shout out to inventive and creative parents who do things like that because it warped my brain in really great ways. Just to be 5 or 6 and think about clouds being like cotton candy. Thanks to all the beautiful language in Nikki Giovanni's work. So that really opened me up to the possibilities of language. And then having a house full of books, my mother had me reading Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings at 12, along with some Carlos Castaneda. So mysticism in the desert mixed with, but I kind of figured it out only in the last year what she did by doing those two things. And then, yeah, so all of that and having a great appreciation for literature, having books in the house,
So
that's what did it.
how did she, I mean, yes, those were around our houses and we knew, but how did your mom know this is what I need to do to embed the importance of language in your mind? Were there words that she attached to the words, or was it just like, read, just keep reading? You know what I mean?
It was, I think I really have to ask her to be honest. I did ask her about some later things that she had me reading. Um, but this early thing, picking Nikki Giovanni as a primary text for a child, I mean, granted, I guess I was a precocious child reading at 4, but like it just, I don't know why she made that choice, but it left an indelible impression on my brain. And it put my brain into a cast that I can never shake off. And I'm so grateful for it because
Yeah.
poetry is where my heart and my soul is, and that's where my people are.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'd love to know when you ask her. Please get back to me and let me know because I'm equally fascinated by that. So, at what point did you decide I'm a poet?
It wasn't until 1999. I wrote my first poem in 3rd grade about a squirrel. Um, I started a poetry club in high school. I did all these things, but it wasn't until 1999 when I had my first publishing credit. And that I also attended the first year of Cave Canem for me, which is a home for Black poets, started by Theyre and Cornelius Eady. And that first trek up to Esopus, New York, to stay in a monastery for a week and learn from people like Lucille Clifton and Sonia Sanchez and Michael Harper and Elizabeth Alexander and Harriet Mullen. It just, It left an impression. And I realized all the weird quirks I'd had all my life, it made me fit right in. All that high emotion, all the love of literature, just
Mhm.
totally fit right in.
Do you think we're all poets at heart?
I think we can be. And I think we have to let loose the constrictions that society presses upon us to navigate our souls in such a way to make us more consumable. Like I truly do.
Yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, so we could be.
yeah. That's a tall order, though, in a white supremacist society to let go while you have to hold back.
Yeah. But I
Right?
tell you who the real poets are. The real poets are the children
Yes.
because they haven't learned to constrict themselves in their thought process yet. They don't have the boundaries that we impose upon ourselves or the boundaries that we don't know enough to free ourselves from. They don't have them yet.
Yeah.
And so the way they put language together, I made sure that my children knew poetry early on.
You bring up an interesting point, which is, again, it's kind of the theme we were on in last week's show. The idea that, the classroom can make or break a kid. So when you talk about kids being poets, if there's a teacher who doesn't see the light in this child and stifles it for something that's more mainstream and conducive to what they need to get done for that semester, that could force a child to lose that light, to lose that ability, lose that language that's really theirs, huh?
It really can. I think teachers, I'm married to a teacher, to an English teacher and to a poet. Um, they have to tap into that nurturing part and just recognize when there's an opportunity to plant a seed rather than to stomp it out,
Mm,
just to fit in. I'm
yeah.
not a big fan of fitting in.
Oh, nor am I. We'll be just fine. So how has being a Black daughter, Black woman, wife, mother, how's that all informed your journey as a poet?
Oh, it's left such a big mark on me. I think it shapes me and I think it helps me make me into a better poet. And that's just for me because I know there are many poets out there who are, not coupled up, who have not spawned. And I've done both of those. But it's forced me to open my heart wider to accept more love and more possibility in the small people I've created. It's forced me to acknowledge the ancestral pain and hurt and fear of motherhood as a Black mother in this country. I've had to reckon with that from the moment he said to me, "It's a girl." And all of a sudden, I realized not only did I have to reckon with the ideas of race, I had to reckon with gender. And I had to reckon with how society views women sometimes as something to consume and spit out. And so that too.
Mm. Been a huge part of your journey. It sounds like each part of yourself has kind of integrated into the other and really just spilled out a lot of feeling, emotion, and really informed it. I mean, that's really just the best way to put it.
Yeah, these identities I hold, they are anchors. They weigh me to this moment. And sometimes if you're not careful, they can sink you and they can drown you. And it's just how to have this balance, this push and pull, so that I can still have this identity as mother, but I also nurture my identity as a poet. I can have this identity as sister and daughter and wife, but I still have to nurture my soul as a poet and leave space for that.
I love how you put that. I'm just taking that in. I can really, it's like a texture you just offered me. I really can feel that. Yeah, that's cool. So, I believe you said you're heavily influenced by the news cycle in many ways. Can you talk about that?
I am. My undergraduate degree is in journalism, actually.
Okay.
And for a good 5 years, I was a talk radio show producer.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was inundated every day with NPR as the show I produced at one point had been syndicated with them when I started on. And I had to absorb the news cycle just so I could absorb it and then figure out a way to craft a conversation around it on a daily basis, 2 times a day for 5 days a week. Um, and so that left me with, or not even left me, it fed my insatiable curiosity. I have an intellectual curiosity about this world, how it works, and the people in it. And so it fed that. And seeing technology, seeing science blossom and change before our own eyes, it also leaves its mark, and it just makes me even more curious about how we are and why we do what we do.
You know, I think that's also interesting because for a lot of people who are that attached to journalism and news, I would imagine that could kill your creativity. So, you know, that's interesting how that fed it instead.
I have a huge heart, and that was part of the issue when I was in junior high and high school. And I wear it on my sleeve. And again, part of the issue. Not an easy thing to do in junior high and high school because you're an easy mark. Right. But that my love for humanity, even if I have issues with some of the people sometimes, most of the time, I'll be honest. Um, but my love of humanity never wavers. It's because I'm so enthralled with the possibilities of how good we can be and the societies that we can create if we had the right impetus, if we had the right infrastructure, if we had the right guidance. Um, so that's where it stays alive because I think I look for those moments where the light is glinting this way on the diamond that is us, and just trying to figure out how best to stay in the warmth of that light and to see the brilliance of the rainbow in it.
Yeah, and I guess holding that light is so important when you have children. And you have to find some hope and keep it lit. You have to guide.
That is the hardest part for me right now. I've been asking a lot of older Black people, like, how do you not get bitter? Because now I see what I've heard for so long. Because I have a tendency to talk to my elders. I love it. I was recording my grandmother and my great aunt for the last like couple of years of their lives
That's
because I recognized that they were a wealth of knowledge.
mhm.
So I've just lately been asking people, how do you not get bitter? And I think having children does help.
Okay.
But it also has that I'm trying to battle with the fear that is also created within me, to have my hearts walking outside my body like this, and in a society that does not see them for who they are. Um, but I will say the joy and the wonder and the awe that they share with me and show me on a daily basis, it does help.
Great. Well, that's a perfect segue. In your words, I am a black poet who will not remain silent while this nation continues to murder black people. I have a right to be angry. Will you talk about Knucklehead, the inspiration for that, and will you actually read it for us?
I will. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And when Tamir Rice was murdered at the age of 12, it left me reeling because I thought, I know how can you not have your kid go outside and play? And the violence that is threaded through the American culture, and it's love of guns. How can you keep these things, even if play guns? And even now, I still won't let my son play with any kind of toy gun because I've explained to him, I'm so sorry. This world is the way it is, but you can't do this. You can't because there's a possibility people won't see you. They won't know you're this really creative kid who loves Legos and loves anime. They won't see that. They'll see what they want to see. So that said, sometimes the poem has to say it for me.
Mhm.
So I'll read Knucklehead. And so Knucklehead. My son's head is a fist rapping against the door of the world. For now, it's dressers, kitchen islands, dining room tables that coax his clumsy, creating small molehills of hurt breaching the surface. The ice pack, a cold kiss to lessen the blow, equals a frigid intrusion. A boy cannot be a boy with all this mothering getting in the way. Sometimes the floor plays accomplice, snagging an ankle, top lip to swell. Other times it's a tantrum, when he spills his limbs onto the hard wood, frenzied then limp with anger, tongue clotted with frustration, a splay of 2-year-old emotion voiced in one winding wail. My son cannot continue this path. Black boys can't lose control at 12, 18, even 43. They don't get do overs. So I let him flail about now, let him run headfirst into the wall, learn how unyielding perceptions can be. Bear the bruising now before he grows, enters a world too eager to spill his blood, too blind to how red it is.
Let's take a breath.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that 12 is for Tamir Rice, that 18 for Michael Brown, um, and that 43 for Eric Garner.
So you have the conversation ongoing with your son, with your children.
Yeah, yeah, I do. And
The talk.
I get so angry that I have to constrict the ways in which he can play. But I'm excited because there are other ways I see his brain expanding.
Are you concerned about, uh, so the idea that he goes to the school, it's kind of a little bit of a bubble. How do you manage that? Because I see that a lot, with kids who have, different opportunities who are brown and black, and then they still have to, they're walking in two worlds. How do you help him navigate that?
I it's really funny, but I try my best to give him a little bit of both worlds. Now I recognize I grew up learning like code switching in itself, right? I grew up learning about code switching and began to code switch early, especially when I moved to Washington D.C. when I was 16 to become a congressional page. It also helped that my grandmother had me up front in front of the church reading the morning announcements and the welcome. So I had to learn how to, be eloquent and enunciate for a crowd early on in life. The funny thing is, my kids are the opposite. Like I have had to teach them more black vernacular because I find it beautiful. I find it musical. I find it deep with texture and story. Right? Just the things. My mother taught me. What was this phrase? She said, "What you getting a giddy up is what you getting around up." It's like, where did that come from? And and of course there's you ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. How we can't lose those. Those are our new tradition. That's our new storytelling. And so I've actually worked to introduce this vernacular with my children at home and to explain that they are living in a society where right now they're on one track to be in one world, but they have to be in connection and in contact and communion and community with the black world. They have to, because these are the people that will take them in when everyone else says no. These are the people that will make sure they have a plate of food wherever they go to school. These are the people who will look out for them if it's just two of them in a room. They have to know this language. They have to know it. Their livelihood depends on it. So yeah, I've been actually doing a reverse instruction, if you will.
That's great. I always have concerns about that with kids who are in environments that don't white spaces. They don't naturally,
Yeah,
uh, nurture that part of themselves, and it is so important. It's why I believe so strongly in HBCUs. Like,
yeah,
being able to just get it where you can get it is so important. It just helps to fill you up in so many ways that are important to live in society. So I love that you're doing that.
yeah. I've been subtly like hinting toward HBCUs to them. Like I just want them to have the balance.
Hmm. Yeah, get them visiting early.
Yeah, that's what I need to do.
Um, so let's talk about what is it? Furious Flower Poetry Center.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, talk
Oh,
about that.
Furious Flower is great. I want to say they started in 1994 with a conference, and the whole, even just the title came from a Gwendolyn Brooks poem. But they started in 1994 in James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And Joanne Gabin was like the main like engine behind all of it. And she recently retired. And Lauren K. Allen, who was the assistant director for Furious Flower, is now moving into the directorship. Yay, Lauren! And yeah, they're just an incredible organization that supports and actually does like the research and holds on to materials about Black culture via poetry, like just via poetry. So I love Fierce Flower, and I think the world of them.
So they're in full effect. They're functioning. They're alive. People can
Yes,
find them and learn about them.
and give to them and support them because they're
Yeah,
one of the few like repositories for Black poetry. They
yeah, that
really
was
keep
great
us
to
alive.
read. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
like
Say it again.
oh no, I said they're just they're necessary to keep alive, and they
Yeah.
function a little different than like Cave Canem, where Cave Canem you go for a week and you learn from some of the biggest names in Black poetry,
Okay.
um, and it fosters a family feeling too. So I think of Furious Flower and Cave Canem often together, just because of the importance of what they do and why we need it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to mention it because I was fascinated to read about it. I was like, I've never heard of it. So it's just there's so much out there to find out, and I want to be able to give voice to it because I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn and support. So that's why I wanted you to talk about it a little bit.
Oh
Glad it
yeah,
means.
they have a great anthology Furious Flower does, and they just put out a new one. I want to say that was last year. I think Knucklehead is in that one.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. So I took a deep dive into your poetry. I felt so much when I was reading it, quite honestly. And I'm the type of person that if I don't feel the funk, I can't fake the funk. That's just how I am. So I felt so many of them, and I just pulled a few as I gave you in the chat. And I'm wondering if you'll pick a few to read and talk about the inspiration for them.
Oh sure. So I love to share some of these goddess poems. So I grew up loving Greek mythology, and it was like the gateway drug to other mythologies. You know,
Mhm.
because once you do Greek, then it's like, oh, there's Roman. And then because I was a Marvel fan, I will dabble in DC Comics too. But because I was a Marvel fan, there was Norse mythology because of Thor. And then there was Egyptian mythology, which I definitely fell down that hole. So all that plus being a comic book head made it quite easy for me to think, oh, let me do these goddesses. Well, it made it easy for me to make them. But I will say, I was talking with another poet, and she gave me the thought. She was like, "Well, why don't you just write your own goddess?" And I was like, "What?
I love
Really?
that.
Oh, that's a great idea." And then once she said that, all these goddesses started breathing down my neck, trying to get out. They're like, "Hey, Terry, what about scars? Hey, Terry, what about parenting? Hey, Terry, what about lust? Hey, Terry, what about anger?" And it was like, I wanted to tackle the things that sometimes it feels like in society we're not allowed to do. And I feel like being angry is, as a Black person in this country, we're not allowed to be angry because
Right.
I mean, I can't even take you to the times people said they were afraid of me, and I'm like 5'3". Um,
Okay.
so yeah.
But I tell you the goddess of cleaning brought up my sister Charlene. I can't even
Mm.
tell you. That's like Black household 101. 7 years old, my sister waking us up, yelling what we needed to do and how we needed to make it seem and feel. That was just so real for me. I got such a kick out of that. And then the scars as well. Those really hit me hard.
So I'll just hit you with both of those then. So
Okay, right on.
here's the goddess of cleaning. And when I often talk about this poem, I talk about my great aunt and my grandmother who are both domestics when they came
Mhm.
from Arkansas to Cleveland. And my grandmother was able to make enough money as a domestic to buy her own home. So I just want to lift that up and lift up the trade, lift up the women who occupy those spaces, the brown and Black
Absolutely.
bodies in those spaces who are often made to be invisible. And they are not, they are loved ones. They have identities. And so this goddess is my way of speaking to them and lifting them up too. And
Love
also
it.
a shout out to chores because man, chores.
Exactly.
So here you go. The goddess of cleaning. I bequeath you bleach, its singeing sting. I bequeath you the scrub brush, best done on hands and knees. I bequeath you ammonia for the exorcism of dirt. I bequeath you power over clutter, the washing machine spin, the dryer's lint grin. I bequeath you the salvation of sweeping, a consecrated grip on the broomstick. I bequeath you the dustpan's collection plate, the floor's sanctified echo, the trash bin's penitent face. I bequeath you the gospel of a mop, the sacred slosh of a rinse bucket's second coming. I bequeath you the torn t shirt as rag, the two sided sponge, vinegar and newspaper squeak, the glass free of streak. I bequeath you an old toothbrush for tiles hard to reach grime. I bequeath you the grunt and scrub of wool, the eradication of rust. Trust in me. I baptize you in sweat, labor's beatific stain. I bequeath you the power to change, one room at a time.
Mm, I love that.
Because that's just in the end, especially during this pandemic, we can't change the world, but gosh darn it, I can keep this room clean. There's one thing I can do. And it's a small power, but it is still a power, right?
And also, Terry, I've done cleaning. I mean, my dad ran a part-time cleaning business. My sister has a cleaning business. Like it's in our culture, to put things together, hold things together, keep things in a certain way. I mean, that's such a metaphor for what we've had to do all of our lives. And so, the idea of just bleach alone. I don't know a black person who doesn't know the importance of bleach. And I talk to my white friends, and they're like, "You'll put a little bleach in your dishwater."
it was it was a revelation for my biracial husband. He was like, "What?" And I was like, "Dude, trust me, you just got to do it. Just just when you need that extra clean, just you need to be sure that it's really clean."
That's right. That's great. Okay, do another one.
So here's the goddess of scars. And this was a little deep dive for me into dermatology. The goddess of scars. I mark you with melanin, a crosshatch of collagen. Better the scar than the loss of limb. Better the clean line, raised itch, festering wound, beckoning death. My apostles, my keloids, my atrophic, my contractures, my hypertrophic response. Each a love I bear to the mammal of you, the ruptured vessel, the broken in dermis. Consider my evolution a song to survival. Consider cells my priests, their work, a ladder of prayer, each stitch an epistle. I grieve to see you separate from yourself. My atonement is a bridge to build you back together. While you can never be born again, you can recover. Each time I sign you, witness the parable of action and consequence. I do not think you show enough reverence. You were never meant to be a smooth canvas, but a texture, a testament. I bless you with the story, and each and every time you live to tell the tale.
I love that. Look, it's just so deep in metaphors. I absolutely love it. It's great. Look, we could go on like this forever. I know I asked you to pick them, but it turns out I'm picking them. What about if we do? What about if you wrap up with "When I'm the Only One in the Room"?
Oh, yeah. As we talk about code switching.
Hmm.
Whew. So, um, yeah. As we talk
I got,
about
all- I
code
got, all-
switching.
I got all excited and then just took it over and didn't even give you the choice. I'm sorry.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I appreciate hearing what resonated with you. That gives me so much joy. Trust me. It's 'cause you write all this stuff in isolation. It's just it lives in your head, or when when you finally get to residency or somewhere to write, and you never know how it's gonna hit. You like, I know what I know, but I don't know if what I know is what other people know too. So here you are, when I am the only one in the room. The southern roots of y'all makes music in my mouth's map. In the north, I cuff the C hard for couplet, then soften it for child and chain. When booking, I drop the G. Depending on the audience, I find it again running. By 10, I knew when to let the W whistle in whom, but darken the room for the D to fall asleep in. I don't know nothing, but the beauty of when a double negative will do. How to make this English buck, then soft shoe when I see you.
I love that. Absolutely love. So good. Really,
Thank you.
really just so appreciate what you do. So I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and ask you about the husband you met. So
Ah,
you have so much in common. I read, that you have. I mean, music, poetry, language, just so many things in common. What's the secret to your bond? If you had to summarize it, what would you say it is?
I think it is having all those things in common because it gives us shared goals and it gives us um, a way to communicate always. Um, being both poets and being that communication is our strong suit as poets, we can find the language when other words won't do. Uh, I intentionally married a poet, and I told him so. And at one point, he did say, "Oh, I'm going to stop writing." I was like, "No, you're not, because if you do, I will divorce you." Okay, because this was intentional. You can't mess this up. But I will say that's it because it's true. Like we rarely argue. I think we argue like maybe once or twice every couple years. I actually asked my children, I was like, when's the last time you see mommy and daddy argue? And they looked at each other like, I don't know. I was like, I do want you to understand that is rare. Yeah. It's just we don't. We one of the secrets I will say is not going to bed angry. Realizing as you're about to get into if you're about to get into some sort of snit, are you hungry or do you need a nap? Because a sandwich and a nap will change your outlook right away. And it's like, it's so simple, but that's how we have not fought for so long. Because you can sit back, you know what? I just might be hangry. Come back to me in about 30 minutes and let's have this whole conversation again.
That's like the beauty of timeout, right?
Yes. Yes.
Don't underestimate
Yes.
the power of a timeout. That's what I tell people all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not your friend. So before we end, I want to make sure that we get out everything that you've done, where they can find your book, anything they want to know. So would you just give a rundown of where to find your books and so forth? Actually, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you can find my books on Amazon. You can find them on bookshop.org. If you want to get out of the whole corporate behemoth. You can also buy it directly from Ohio State University. It's on their site. I actually think they have like different specials at different times of the year. So that's where those are. And even my first book, Hank, you can find it too on Amazon and on Bookshop and through the publisher, Gival Press, Gibal Press, which is a great small independent press in Virginia. I'll be out and about. I've been doing events. I just got in from an event at the Shippensburg University, and I'm going to a reading later on tonight. I'll be reading for a Black-owned bookstore in DC, Solid State Books. Shout out Solid State.
Right on.
And I'll also be the poet in residence for Salisbury, Maryland next week for a whole week, basically. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to being in the classroom, talking to kids. So
Yeah.
to meet the mayor and do all kinds of things and run a couple of poetry readings and workshops too. But yeah, and it's so stuff is out there. You can also find my work on the Academy of American Poets.org. I have some poems up there, including Knucklehead, and another poem, Thank You, Jesus, and Crescendo, which also talks about child rearing and spanking, actually, and lots of other things. So it's out there, and I'm trying to work on book 3. It's
Great.
hard, but
Great.
trying.
So wait, what's the name of your last book is?
A More Perfect Union, which came out in 2021, and
Okay.
so More Perfect Union cover,
Yeah.
and then
Great.
here's Haint, which
Perfect.
came out in 2016.
Also, any social media handles?
Oh yeah, thank you. I'm on Twitter at cross_Davis. I'm on Instagram at Haint Poet. So and then my husband and I have a website, poetsandparents.com, that we try and keep updated, and it gives you information. Like he and I just won awards from Maryland, from the Maryland State Arts Council. Um, yeah,
That's
he
awesome.
he won a $10,000 regional prize. I won a $25,000 statewide prize. So
Right on.
it's like poetry. Who knew?
I love it. I love it. That's great. So I'm assuming you believe poetry has a great healing qualities. So if you can share, what is the potential of changing the narrative with poetry?
Mm. The funny thing is, the narrative is being changed right now in poetry, thanks to organizations like Have Kanam, which just received this huge award from, I think, the National Book Critics Circle, and how its over 400 fellows deep has created Pulitzer Prize winners, poet laureates, and MacArthur Geniuses, and Guggenheim Fellows, and the list goes on. um, you know, poetry, the narrative is changing. And what is also happening is we're seeing a rise in indigenous poets. We're seeing a rise in Asian American, Pacific Islander poets, Latinx poets. All of this, when Cave Canem started in 1996, other organizations realized the wealth of opportunity that could be achieved by nurturing their own poets. And so you have places like Kundiman, which nurtures Asian American poets, and Canto Mundo or Letras Latinas, or Inde Na Po, which nurtures indigenous poets. All these organizations have sprung up, and they're creating these incredible, or I shouldn't even say creating, they're sculpting and giving a platform for all these incredible poets and voices that have been marginalized for so long. And now it's the marginalized story that's taking center stage, rightly so. And that's where the focus should be. Because I just can't get enough of hearing these narratives from different cultures and traditions that have been silenced for so long. And so it's changing the narrative. And that's why Cafe Canem got that award, because you cannot look at the world of American letters and not see the impact of Cafe Canem. You just cannot. It's just changed. It's changed American letters for good.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. So you mentioned Letras Latinas.
Hmm.
That was something that you did. It was slated during the pandemic, and how did talk about that for a second before we sign off?
Oh, sure. That was I worked with Heidi Andres Restrepo Rhodes, another poet. And through Letras Latinas, we both put together a video segment. I recorded poems, she recorded poems, and then they were all edited together. Each individual segments, but in one thing. And that was through Letras Latinas, which is out of Notre Dame. And yeah, and but they still have they used to have an office here in DC. The pandemic shut that down, but I'm still in touch with Francisco Erigon, who's an incredible poet and the director of Letras Latinas, and he reached out to me to create this during the pandemic as a way to still give an opportunity to have poetry out there, to share poetry when we needed it most. And actually, I would argue we always need it, as a counterbalance to so much of what goes on, to so much of the horror and the shock that happens in this world, and the inhumanity. That we always need poetry, to remind us of what good lies within us, and how to silence ourselves so we can hear it. Um, but yeah, so that's how that came about. That was Heidi's an incredible poet, and I really loved what was put together.
That's amazing. Look, I think poetry is necessary. I also think it tells a lot of truth that we don't always have the language for ourselves. And it can speak to us in ways that can really feel empowering and validating. So I appreciate your voice, your language, your presence. Thank you so much for coming on. I know that it's a little bit chaotic trying to organize and schedule these things, particularly when everybody's life is so busy. So I just want to say sincerely, thank you for coming on and sharing your word. Very important, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for making the space, because we have to change the narrative. We have to introduce different ways to look at this world and how to be in it. Because obviously, I mean, also I'm one with down with I want the patriarchy gone too, but we won't even go there.
That'll be another show you come on.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, we have to change the narrative. We have to. Um, we have to have something that reflects who we can be. I
Mhm.
want that more perfect union that we have not gotten yet. So
Yeah. For your
thank you.
children and all the rest.
Yes.
Thank you, sis.
Thank you.